Hey, Mickey, that looks like the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote you're holding up there. Now, who do they represent?
But the Roadrunner is sort of going over the Wile E. Coyote is sort of going over a cliff, Bob.
Are they you and me, by the way, before you go further? Is this Mickey and Bob?
No, maybe it will be later. When we talk about how you failed to give me credit for my Chris riff last week in your latest item.
That's a bald-faced lie.
Okay. You did give me credit?
Yeah, you clearly didn't read the whole thing.
No, I didn't. I have commenters complaining, but
well, you should get new commenters. Is what you should do.
Never mind,
because these are not reliable commenters. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about this.
Never mind. Okay, I take it all back. It's not the first time I've been wrong this week. So it seems to me that the narrative of the press is now the Democrats are coming back. The Democrats are coming back, and there is some evidence that the Democrats are coming back. They've won 4 consecutive, off special elections in a row.
Sarah Palin gone.
Well, she's not gone. She runs again in November.
In November? Well, yeah. Gone for the time being is what I meant to say.
And the Republicans were split between her and Begich, and Begich had a lot of money from Chamber of Commerce types, and he's an old political family, and so the question is, why didn't she get any of his second? Why didn't she get his second choice votes?
Yeah, they have a funny voting system there.
They have a ranked choice system. So, I mean, she legitimately lost, but she, things could happen by November, and one of them could drop out, and the Republicans could get the seat. Also, is Sarah Palin such a huge MAGA figure? I mean, she's Sarah Palin, but
she was MAGA before it was cool, man.
Right, that's the point. Why isn't Trump a Palin figure? I mean, it's not like her losing is by definition 100% a blow against Trump. I mean, she has her own baggage, and she hasn't been has she been 100% for Trump? I mean, they're basically allied. But anyway, but they're ignoring the press is ignoring a bunch of other data. Like there's a CBS poll that Robert Costa said, "Oh, this shows the Democrats are gaining." Well, it showed they gained like 4 seats in the projected House races. So the Republicans were getting 226 instead of 230, which is not nothing, but it's only 4 or 6 seats. I forget what it was. And it
would still leave the Republicans in control.
Yeah. And but the generic ballot was the same. It was flat. So it wasn't really one way or the other. There have been some generic ballots that have shown the Democrats way ahead. There have been some that show the Republicans way ahead. They're really all over the lot in an unbelievable fashion. So it's quite hard to tell, I think, which way it's going to go. The Democrats could take the House. I mean, it's entirely possible. So I would not bet the farm on the Republicans winning the House.
I'll settle for the Democrats taking the Senate personally, although that will, if they don't take the House, that will subject us to a lot of hearings, I guess, about Hunter Biden and stuff.
Well, no, it's more important than that. It's that if the Democrats take the House, Biden can pass all his legislation. Right. If they don't take the House, Biden can't.
I understand that from your point of view.
If you care about a bunch of bad Democratic legislation getting stopped, the House is the ball game.
So what is the bad legislation? Is what? Child tax credit with what is it you fear exactly?
Yeah, I mean, I fear. Bob, come on. I fear a resurrection of the dole where we spend a lot of money, which is the important part, sending checks to people who don't work in never married families. So single moms who don't work get checks. Not enough to live on, but you'd be surprised how little people can live on. And also, it's so we have a huge swath of unemployed people in the Midwest and the Rust Belt states who will live lives of idleness and on fentanyl and we'll have a whole underclass, and it'll be a white and black underclass, and it's just a bad thing sociologically. I mean, it's there's all these studies coming out showing that what matters for success is who you hang out with and what culture you're from. And if you're from a culture that gets by on the dole without working, and Romney has a plan that his new plan says you have to work. You have to have a certain amount of income from the year before. That's a good compromise. Okay, if they just pass that, I could live with that.
Okay,
but the Democrats won't if they have enough power.
Yeah.
And
well, the reason I think the Senate is so important is I just maybe I worry too much. But if things do get ugly again, the way they were seeming to get around January 6th, when the country seemed on the verge of really ugly stuff, federal judges become very important, I think, right, in times like that. And when you're appealing election results and stuff. So I kind of like the idea of 2 more years of Democrats fueling the federal court system.
Yeah, although that's not really going to make a huge difference in time for the next January 6th.
Well, you do what you can. It'll be. You never know. You know, Trump had 4 years of doing it, and
one thing that happened, which you probably like, is that it looks like they have enough votes to pass the reform of the Electoral Count Act.
They're going to put it in English.
Grassley announced he was for it. I don't know. I don't think go that far. I mean, that's a big step. But liberals like Greg Sargent approve of it, and I didn't see anything really wrong with it. So that's an improvement. It doesn't eliminate the problem entirely, because state legislatures could still appoint electors that were not the choice of the people. But it eliminates a lot of the problems. Look at the basically, if the Democrats win the House, Mickey's life is over, because
on the contrary,
they'll try to pass an amnesty, and they'll pass the child tax credit. And
but you'll have more to bemoan. Bemoaning is your stock and trade.
Mickey is sick of bemoaning. He'd like to move on from bemoaning.
Well, okay, this works so far.
But here are some discordant data for the Wile E. Coyote narrative. Okay.
Oh, wait! I forgot to nail that one down. Wait, so who is Wile E. Coyote and who is
Wile E. Coyote? Is the mainstream media that is persisting with the Democrats or head narrative, perhaps after it has peaked, and they look down and they see there's nothing beneath them, and the trend reverses. It's way too early to say the trend is reversing. My God, but right
now they're still up in the air, spinning. They think they're running. They think they're on terra firma. You got bad news for them. They're actually over the cliff.
They're citing Nate Silver's site to say, well, Fetterman has a 75%, 85% chance of winning, and the Democrats have an 85% chance of getting the Senate. And it's just all crap. We don't know who's going to get the Senate. It's sort of pointless to say 85, 75 at this point. Fetterman, for example, is 4 or 5 points ahead. That's not insurmountable 2 months from the election. Ohio, Vance is up. Georgia, Walker, of all people, is up. Although they have to have a debate at some point, and he's going to be down. But
wait, he's actually ahead of Warnock?
He's actually ahead by 2 points.
In reliable polls?
In a reliable poll, yeah.
That's horrible.
The argument is that Kemp is winning so big that he's dragging Walker across the finish line. We don't know what will happen in the actual vote, but the point is that this poll is not bad for Walker, certainly. Johnson in Wisconsin is behind by 2. Well, he can make that up if he wants. And even Masters, who's supposed to be this horrible, no good candidate who everybody hates, is down by 4. Okay, that's not insurmountable either. So, and Bennett is in trouble in Colorado, and he was considered a relatively safe seat. The latest poll had him up by 1. So, maybe he'll be the new Economist columnist. Who knows? The
reference is to his brother, who actually is one.
Right. And I don't know what's happening in North Carolina, Nevada, and New Hampshire. Those are the other 3 swing states. But Republicans have to win 5 of those to take the Senate. And it's possible. It's entirely possible.
But you profess to be okay with the Democrats keeping the Senate. That is not your nightmare.
Correct. As long as our clumsy, veto-laden system of making laws still functions to block legislation, I'm happy. As long as the gridlock machine is working.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Republican problem is their people didn't turn out, for example, in this special election in New York. There is some evidence that without Trump on the ballot, the rural deplorables don't turn out.
As you lovingly call them, you want to emphasize.
Well, Biden is now resurrecting this loser Hillary trope.
Yeah.
And he's not calling them deplorables, but he's calling them, what is it, extreme MAGA, super MAGA?
Well, he said a couple of things. He characterized the whole philosophy underlying Trumpism as quasi-fascism, and the MAGA people are
semi-fascist.
Or semi-fascism, I guess, and the MAGA people are turning that into semi-fascists. Like, I checked into Bannon's podcast today, and they're acting as if he called Trump supporters semi-fascists. They're calling us semi-fascists. So he did that, but
how did he not do that? If MAGA is semi-fascist and these people are super MAGA, then they're semi-fascist.
Well, what he strictly speaking said is the philosophy underlying Trumpism is it could well be that people vote for Trump for reasons other than thoroughly embracing the philosophy. That said, I don't encourage this kind of talk precisely because it can be distorted in that way. But Biden said something a little worse than that, too. And I got into this in the piece of mine in which you claim I gave you no credit, which, by the way, you don't deserve, but I generously gave you anyway. We'll get to that. But how
did I not deserve it? You said this. You argued against this idea last week, and now you've embraced it.
I didn't argue against the idea. Okay, so I guess we should let's don't litigate it, but let's at least. So
Let's review it anyway.
You had this kind of tweet, which by your own admission was pompous. It was.
Well, God, if pomposity is the problem,
who will be our journalist? Is that what you're going to say?
Correct.
Indeed, I would be alone. Well, first, let me say what Biden did say, which I mentioned in this piece. He said, I don't respect MAGA Republicans. This was last week. And he really was talking about the voters. He was saying, right. I do not respect anyone who voted for Trump. That is stupid. That is just grist for their narrative mill. And they did use it that way. And in fact, they paired it with the thing you pointed out in the aforementioned tweet where Charlie Crist said of DeSantis supporters, he said, quote, those who support the governor should stay with him. I don't want your vote. If you have that hate in your heart, keep it there. If you read that closely, he does seem to be saying that all of the governor's supporters have hate in their heart. They're haters. That's dumb. DeSantis, as I note in this piece in the Nonzero newsletter, went on Tucker that very night, and they made hay of this. And Tucker says, oh, they think they're Chris thinks he's morally superior to all of you. And then the next few days, they built, adding on quotes by other people, like Kathy Hochul had said something that actually wasn't that ill-advised. She wasn't talking about supporters, but still, they managed to meld it with this. And then
she was talking about all Republicans, if I remember.
No, she was talking about 3 Republican candidates. And saying they are not real New Yorkers. That's all I saw. And
who were the people who she said should get on a bus and move to Florida? It was more than 3 people.
Trump and Molinaro and some other person. Okay. I don't know. But she was not talking about the voter.
Anyway, don't let me interrupt. Sorry.
And then they but DeSantis got another day of media out of that by adding the Hochul thing to this and saying it's like conspiracy. And then day 3 is Fox News adding Biden's quote about I don't respect MAGA Republicans and just seeing a real trend. We got 3 anecdotes and only one is flagrantly dishonest, right? The Crist and the Biden.
Well, so one is enough. What's the point?
The point is I agree. I mean, we had this argument last week, which was based 50% on my misunderstanding what you were saying. Your tweet, you quote tweeted the Crist thing, and then you said,
okay, well, so now you understand it. Go ahead.
This formalizes a shift from thinking your political opponents are wrong-headed to thinking they're evil people. I thought you were saying Crist was saying that DeSantis, his political opponent, was wrong. Anyway, But what you were saying, which is that it's not a good idea to demonize the entire base of your opponent, is, of course, as you know, something. It's a sermon of mine.
That's why I was stunned that you disagreed
that's why
with
you're
me.
Stunned that I
thought I was sucking
incomprehension.
I thought I was sucking up to you, and I was rejected.
I want to apologize for not accepting you sucking up gracefully.
But wait. So, but how do we get into this? I forget. Oh, we were talking about. I was talking about how Trump had trouble mobilizing this deplorable base. But anyway, you had some additional point to make about.
Well, they are just. And then I checked into the Bannon podcast. They're playing this quasi-fascist thing heavily. I'm just saying that I put this all together in the newsletter piece. That where the credit is, there's an afterword. There's a note at the end of the piece recounting this Twitter spat and saying, and now I'm appropriating his main point without giving him very much credit. It was a little joke. Maybe your followers should have read that before they griped about me. But I digress.
Maybe they should have. You're the victim here. So anyway, Republicans have trouble mobilizing their rural, deplorable, whatever it is, semi-fascist MAGA vote, and whatever you want to call it. And it's hard to do without Trump. So in that sense, Biden putting Trump back on the ballot might actually help Republicans, but it hurts Republicans among independents. So you have a choice. Do you go for the independents by downplaying Trump, or do you go for the Trump voters by playing up Trump? And if you ask any political consultant like Bill Carrick, who always gives a not radically radical but correct answer, you want both. If you're going to win the campaign, you got to get both. You got to get both.
Which means you got to shift suddenly.
Well, and what's the strategy that can do that? It seems to be obviously the strategy is, let the prosecution of Trump sort of fade into the background for the mainstream voters. The MAGA people will know that it's there, and emphasize cultural issues that are the only ones that have a hope of getting them out of their houses on election day. Not inflation, but the border, which is consistently relatively high in the polls in terms of way behind inflation, but in terms of what Republican voters care about, it's way up there. Cultural issues. It seems to me the obvious one that just mobilizes people is surgical transitions of preteens, which, according to City Journal, Biden is now pushing internationally, trying to pressure Sweden into offering gender-affirming care, or that's a proposal. So that just enrages people, maybe beyond its importance, but that's the whole point. You want to enrage people. And the third is crime, and the Republicans are on the verge of letting the Democrats steal the crime issue.
How?
Because Biden says, how can you be anti-crime and attack the FBI? Let's back the blue. And Biden's going on a whole Clintonian drive to the center at the last minute. He's going to go to the border and inspect the border and say, probably some middle of the road thing. And he has a crime bill out now, which he unveiled in July, which is the classic Clinton 100,000 more police crime bill. It's like a Bruce Reed special. He produces these things very well with like 100 little things, so it looks like it's a lot of substance. And so that's how he's stealing the crime issue. He has a bill he's pushing, and the Republicans, are just don't have their act together as much in a centralized fashion in terms of pushing it. They're still doing this inflation thing. And the other thing is, I saw a story on my friend John Ellis's news items. It turns out it's an old story. It's a few months old, but it's still relevant, which is the pandemic has been good to the bottom 50%. Their wealth increased, since the pit of COVID, their wealth has doubled.
Wait. Wealth has doubled in absolute terms?
That's what it said in this article. I didn't really cite a source, but that's what
of course they don't have much to begin with. So doubling,
the average wealth is 166,000, and that's probably mostly the 40 to 50% percentile. Yes. But
Right.
anyway,
Yeah.
the tight labor market works wonders. These people are doing well because of the tight labor market. They get wage increases, they can switch jobs, blah, 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 blah. Maybe that's the secret Marxist reason why the Republicans are having trouble mobilizing these people. They're not that pissed off. They're doing pretty well. You could say, is it because of Biden? Is it because Trump held the lid on immigration? I would say both. But whatever it is, they're not that pissed off for hardcore economic, reasons. So that's another thing the Republicans are up against. So, with the current Republican leadership, which is now feuding amongst themselves, I despair of them hitting on these cultural issues. But, it seems obvious that that's the two-pronged strategy they should pursue.
Wait, what are the two prongs?
Let the Trump prosecution fade in terms of don't make a fuss about it. It's too boring to.
Okay.
They probably won't indict him until after the election, and if they do, it'll sort of fade from the front pages by the time of the midterms. Maybe that's why they will indict him before the election. And so the independents aren't that exercised about Trump being on the ballot, and then use the cultural issues to prod the deplorables. If this is all untested, it's maybe that nobody can prod the deplorables the way Trump can prod the deplorables. But the alternative of having Trump do it himself is you lose the independents. So,
yeah,
obviously, if Chris is doing it and Biden is doing it, there's some memo that went out saying we are going to demonize the MAGA people.
You think
we have
really?
Yes, we have poll tested it. It works. That's why he's doing it.
I don't know. I mean, Biden is such a loose cannon. I do think it was in the script. It was in his scripted remarks. At least one of the two things he said was in his scripted remarks.
He said it 5 times. Of course, it's a
but that doesn't mean. I mean, that doesn't mean Chris got the same memo. Come on. I mean, Chris has got his own race.
Chris looked like he was saying something that somebody told him.
Yeah, but then he kind of half walked it back.
That's why he walked it back. That's why he walked it back. He didn't really mean.
He didn't technically walk it back. He qualified it by saying, right, but that's why it didn't seem that scripted to me.
That's precisely why it did seem scripted. He says the script and it's contrary to his ingratiating nature. So then he tries to walk it back a little.
So in the course of researching my piece, I looked a little more into DeSantis, and maybe we can talk about that mainly in the Parrot Room. But one thing, I concluded that he could be a pretty formidable presidential candidate. I think way more than Trump. And in fact, I looked at the betting markets, and they give him, they don't give him as high a probability of getting the nomination as Trump, but they give him about as high a chance of winning the presidency. I mean, right now, they give each of them about a 1 in 5 chance of being president. And that means that the markets believe that if DeSantis gets the nomination, he has a better chance than Trump gets if he gets the nomination. Which doesn't surprise me. I mean, DeSantis is pretty formidable. And one thing I just concluded is, they just got to dump Biden. I mean, it's hopeless. They can't run Biden. They can't run Harris. It's too risky. And I assume that after the midterms, suddenly there will be this big dialogue about that, right? I mean, I assume that the reason the Democratic establishment is not talking that up now, they did go through a phase, some weeks ago of, letting it be known that there were real doubts about Biden as a candidate in 2024, but hasn't been along a chatter since. And I assume that's because that's just bad term for the midterm performance. But don't you think right after the midterms, I think we need somebody to jump in the race right after the midterms?
I think all that will happen, but maybe not right. It depends who wins the Congress. If the Democrats win the House, there's going to be a period of legislative, a legislating period where they're trying to pass their agenda. And for that, it helps for Biden to pretend that he's running again. So maybe for 4 months or so, Biden will pretend he's running again, and then we'll have the conversation.
I guess this is almost a reason for me to hope the Democrats don't win the House, because that will give Biden a little momentum, right? And the guy's got to go. I mean, to imagine him on the debate stage against DeSantis is
momentum out the door, you mean?
What do you mean? I mean,
you're saying you hope the Democrats don't win the House.
I said if there's a good reason for me to root against them, it would be that they're winning the House would give Biden momentum, right?
Oh, okay, right.
And I just am terrified by the thought of like him and DeSantis, or in a way, him and Trump on the same debate stage.
He could do okay in debate. I mean, he's not like
he can't.
He's better than Herschel Walker and John Fetterman.
He's got 2 more years of decline between now and the debates.
That's a good point.
But this is not pretty, man. Let me tell you what
he gave a rambling speech with sort of filled with semi-racist stereotypes, and that's the old Biden. He was all there.
That'll work.
He was all there. And
so here's what the betting markets say about the Democratic prospects. Okay, they've got, interestingly, by the way, the conventional wisdom, according to the betting markets, is that he will not be the nominee. Okay, why
do we put any more trust in the betting markets than the stock market? You know, it's less trustworthy because there are fewer people in it. So
I don't know.
They're often wrong.
I think in some of these markets there is real money that's put there by real people who care about it and are fairly smart. Also, it doesn't seem that crazy to me. The basics seem about right. So they give Joe Biden a 1 in 3 chance of getting the nomination. That's interesting. I think he probably won't get the nomination. They give Kamala Harris a 1 in 6 chance.
Way too high.
And then there's just a bunch. Well, then there's one, they give, here's the order. Buttigieg, 1 in 14, 15. AOC, 1 in 50. Elizabeth, Elizabeth Warren's odds are better. I don't know why she's in 4th. Her odds are actually better. She's like 1 in 25. Those are the only ones that are above 1%.
Well, we left out when we go through this ritual a lot of trying to figure out who a Democrat who could win the nomination would be, and we always leave out an obvious one, which is if he beats Herschel Walker or Warnock.
You mentioned him last week, but maybe that was in the Parrot Room, and I said that would be a pretty rapid ascent, meaning it's a pretty thin resume, and you said, well, it would be like Obama.
Yeah, it would be exactly like Obama. Maybe even a little bigger resume than Obama. So
I like Warnock a lot. A guy who is nowhere now. Warnock is on the betting list, I believe, at 1 in 1,000 or something. He's on there. Guy who's not on there is Chris Murphy. I guess that's because he's saying right now he doesn't want it. Maybe he means it. I still say people should take him seriously. And one thing I like about him is I think I can imagine him. See, I have this theory that the Democratic nominee in 2024 could conceivably win by running a positive campaign, do the opposite of what we've been complaining about, them calling Trump supporters this and that and so on. Just do the opposite. Let the Republican candidate go negative and say, look, we've had too many years of this. I look to a brighter future. It's all good. And I can see Chris Murphy doing that, being a kind of a gentleman politician.
That's good advice. At least it's heartening advice. I guess if abortion has mobilized the Democrats and there's a danger of mobilizing the Trumpists, what is the logic of this Biden anti-MAGA demonizing campaign? It might misfire. I mean, already the Democrats are already mobilized. They're winning special election after special election. Why does he need to do this? It seems to me the negatives may outweigh the positives. But
I think it's partly that he's not thinking about the general election for Congress. He's thinking about his own chances of being president. There's a big difference between the messaging you do to get the nomination and the messaging you do to win the general.
No, that's crazy. The Democrats are 100% focused on the midterms.
Yeah, they are. But if you're Joe Biden, what do you focus on? You focus on Joe Biden.
Joe Biden's advisors are 100% focused on the midterms. If Joe Biden wants to do anything in the second half of his first term, he has to win the midterms. So I guarantee you that Donilon, his advisor, is not saying, "Gee, let's look past the midterms." I don't believe that.
Well, then the theory is that fear is their best asset. If you want to get people out to the polls, you got to scare them. I don't know that's right.
I guess that's right. Or maybe
they passed a certain amount of legislation. They can't promise the stuff they passed.
Well, but he could boast. He could boast about the legislation instead of, he knows that the anti-Trump stuff is going to get the headline. Whatever else he says in the speech, is not going to be reported.
Honestly, I think if he followed the prescription I just laid out, let's go positive, that might win. It would seem like a pretty sudden turnaround at this point. But if he started criticizing people who call others semi-fascist, that would seem a little odd.
It's only a surprising turnaround because he's already launched this thing for 2 weeks. Yeah.
Right. That's what I mean. But I think in principle, it could have done. I mean, Americans are sick of all this shit. That's what I think. I think enough Americans are sick of all this shit.
That's actually a very good idea and a radical idea that nobody is promoting. You should write that article. Write that. I should do that, or I should declare my candidacy. And Mickey, I would like to pause now and make an announcement. Well, Bob, I noticed that she who shall not be named, when I asked her, no, Alexa,
AOC,
Alexa.
Oh. Okay.
When I asked her the time, she said, "And would you like a daily affirmation from?" Bob? And I didn't hear where it was from, so it might have been you.
Could have been. I mean, would you like one?
If you get on this Alexa daily affirmation thing, your campaign will be launched.
Would you like an affirmation from Bob? That's the kind of platform I need access to.
About the positive. You should write this up and give me full credit. Just for the hell of it.
I'm telling you, man. I gave you so much credit, so low in my piece.
Low in the piece.
Beneath the bottom of the piece. That's how low.
Low beneath the bottom is better than the armpit, which is 3/4 of the way through. So I'll take beneath the bottom. Anyway, that's a very good idea. The other wrinkle is that Trump's tweets were verging on so crazy this week that it was pointed out either by Maggie Haberman or somebody she retweeted that they weren't really, it was all like, he labeled people's enemies, and he seemed to be sort of actual, a battle against his enemies as opposed to an election. He seemed to be, he called for the election to be held over again, that they must hold a new election immediately. And he had all sorts of things. It was if he was waging a sort of guerrilla war, not running for office.
Mickey, can I just interject a minor correction? We don't call them tweets. We call them truths because they appear on Truth Social, where Trump does his truth.
Truth.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Anyway, it was not what you would do if you wanted to mobilize the deplorables in the midterms. Mm-hmm. You would not say, "Hey, let's reenact January 6th and smite the enemies." You would say, you would say whatever you say about how people have to go to the polls. You would not say the election was rigged, so we have to run a new one. You would say, we fixed the election and now we have to go to the polls and win. They can't stop a landslide. All the things he should have said in Georgia. So he may not help the Republicans there. I mean, no, even if he's in the spotlight, he won't help the one way he could help, which is mobilizing the rural base vote.
And no, it's funny when you said he may not help. I just imagined the headline: Trump possibly not helpful, and it just seemed like kind of a comic.
Well, but there are people, including some very astute analysts, who think he did turn out the vote in for the House in in 2020, and Although then why didn't he win? And he did even turn out the vote in Georgia. There's some people who say he didn't hold back the vote in Georgia, that he actually has the secret for turning out the vote. So, that's the way he could help, and nobody else could help.
Yeah, no, the headline I was imagining was in reference to his influence not on the Republican Party, but on the world, and that's why I was laughing.
Well, it's not like he pledged to Israel that Iran would never have a nuclear weapon this week.
Wait, did Biden pledge that again? Hasn't he already done that?
Yes, but he pledged it again to Lapid in a phone call, or however you pronounce his name. You don't want to get into the Thiel versus McConnell spat.
I'm totally not up on that. Peter Thiel versus McConnell,
and it was McConnell has a limited amount of money, a lot of money to spend on all these candidates.
But compared to Thiel,
he wanted to force Thiel to spend more to back his two candidates, Vance and mainly Masters. And Thiel said, no, thanks. That would just become an issue in the campaign. And, his philosophy is, I think, you seed the money and then you don't let them sink or swim on their own or something like that. Anyway, so McConnell tried to pressure Thiel into ponying up some more money. He's already given them $15 million. And that may have been one of the reasons he canceled some ads for Masters as sort of a demonstration of, what could happen. And now it looks like he's caved and he's realized Thiel is not going to pony up and he has to pony up. But the obvious person who should pony up is Trump. These are Trump-endorsed candidates. Trump is sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars or $100 million. He should support the Trumpist candidates. Yeah, and if he endorsed these guys, he should back them with money. What are all these poor gullible people sending him their life savings for?
Couldn't that work to his favor when he seeks the nomination?
If what? If he had backed
Trump, if he does back them.
Yes, but he's not doing it.
I know. So why isn't he? I mean, my response was going to be...
Because he's a selfish pig.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
But that's my point. It's not even intelligently selfish. If it could help him politically to give them the money down the road, it's not like it's his personal money. It's money at his disposal. I guess he's thinking, well, I'd rather save it and spend it on my campaign.
Correct. But no, it's completely unrational in terms of he should be the guy who sees a bunch of people who will have to support him. There is the Nixon example in '68, which we haven't talked about, which is you can even lose an important race. Nixon lost the governorship of California and still campaign for president and win. So suppose the guy like Bennett loses in Colorado, got nothing better to do than run for president for a few years. Hey, it's not out of the question. Suppose even Warnock loses. Okay, not out of the question that he could run for president. I mean, they won't be more likely to end up as vice president, but there's nothing that says you have to have won your last race.
No, there is no law.
It helps, but also it hurts in that you have to actually spend time governing instead of running. So anyway, it adds a few more people there if you want to, maybe Beto O'Rourke can lose in Texas and having lost 3 races in a row, he'll run for president.
I mean, please. He has so much potential, but he's too much of a performer at heart. What he wanted to be was a rock star, and he doesn't. He has the indiscipline that rock stars can get away with and politicians can't. Like once he said that thing about, what did he say? Like, yes, I will take your guns. And then he's going to run again in Texas. I mean, no, not a good.
Another issue is what should Republicans do about their unpopular abortion position? I was heartened that Blake Masters had scrubbed his website of his anti-abortion, statements because he's moving in the right direction. I mean, voters tend less, if people are flip-flopping in the direction the voters want, the voters tend not to hold it against them. I mean, some do. It looks hypocritical. but it also tells the voters that they're in charge. So this guy is doing what you want. We control him. It's not a bad thing. So flip-flopping is never as important as which direction you're going, I don't think. And Masters is going in the better direction. But Rich Lowry wrote a column saying Republicans can't duck and hide. They have to like, keep their long-term goal, total abolition of abortion, basically, in mind, recommit, stay committed to that goal, but go in baby steps. First we have a 15-week ban, then we have but the voters aren't idiots. If that's your long-term goal, and there's a real chance you might enact it, they'll know it's your long-term goal, and they'll hold it against you. So I think if you have Rich Lowry's position, you sort of have to hide the ball. You have to lie. I mean, I don't see where you get away with being honest. Yes, we want to abolish all abortion, but we'll settle for a 15-week ban. I mean, I don't think that wins you elections.
Mickey's advocating lying.
No, I just think it's a dilemma. I'm advocating reality. I don't believe in reality happens to go in my direction. I'm not hardcore anti-abortion. So
okay.
I think the trimester regime is fine, but I'm not a woman, so I have a different perspective.
I think I'm just going to let you continue to talk. This is getting better and better.
I think if a gentleman gets into trouble, there should be a way out, Bob.
Now, who said that? You should explain to people you're not saying that. Remind us who just said that.
A dean of Harvard.
Said it long ago. Dean at Harvard said it, ages ago.
A dean of Harvard, whose name I forget, said it about 40, 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah. Now, speaking of things that happened a long time ago, well, should we talk about Gorbachev or save that for the Parrot Room or what? I want to talk about the Ukrainian offensive a little. Not that I can figure out what's going on.
Let's talk about the Ukrainian offensive and see how much time there's left. I noticed the Institute for the Study of War is saying, don't worry, the Ukrainian offensive is just moving very slowly.
Yeah.
Take your time. Don't expect too much.
The worst sign I've heard or seen for the Ukrainians is how defensive the Institute for Study of War is being. Again, this is this like neocon operation that is a think tank and has somehow convinced the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Washington Post that it's an objective arbiter of information. And they do a lot of actual reporting of on-the-ground stuff and work very hard and spend a lot of money to make sure that their talking points have all the qualities they need to get uncritically accepted and conveyed by mainstream media. Okay. So, and I wrote a whole thing about it in the newsletter, but the worst sign for this offensive, and first I should say, it's hard to figure out what's going on. I mean, clearly it hasn't been this thoroughgoing Ukrainian success. I don't think it's been a catastrophic failure. They've taken some villages, they've taken some ground. I think they've established and expanded a beachhead, or at least expanded one they already had across a river, which is important. But there's just not much good information coming out. I think the bad signs for Ukraine are two. First of all, their kind of advocates aren't saying much. They're not reporting much. Secondly, Ukraine's always been good at generating imagery for social media, and we're just not seeing the pictures of like 5 Russian tanks destroyed or something, like any one area where things went really badly for the Russians. And the pro-Russian people have circulated a little of that kind of stuff that I guess is credible with Ukrainians. In other words, seemingly, not small scale, but not nothing kinds of carnage. But the worst thing is the way the Institute for the Study of War is being so defensive. So here's what they're saying. Things like military operations on the scale of this counteroffensive do not succeed or fail in a day or a week. Which, first of all, look, it's true. I mean, the Russians, it seemed like a stalemate forever before they took those 2 critical cities in Luhansk. But anyway, then they say military forces that must conduct offensive operations without the numerical advantages normally required for success in such operations often rely on misdirections and feints to draw the defender away from the sectors of the line on which breakthrough and exploitation efforts will focus. In other words, maybe we haven't seen the real offensive.
Well, what if this whole southern counteroffensive is itself a feint and they actually plan to attack somewhere else? That seems implausible because the Russians would know where they're moving their troops. But if it were all a feint, where would it be?
Yeah, I don't see
the
where it would
Donbass,
be.
I guess.
There's no place where I think it's more important that Ukraine actually take ground than here, because taking ground would make it much harder for the Russians to ever get to Odessa and turn Ukraine into a landlocked country. Now, by the same token, my fear is that they're going to throw so many good troops into this who are going to get killed that the Russians are, in the long run, going to have an easier time getting to Odessa. Because remember, playing offense is harder than defense. Normally, the casualties are higher on the side that's doing the offense, which is what the Ukrainians are doing now. They are throwing some of the good troops into this. And what I worry is, Russia can afford to be patient in principle, and they have a lot more men in the long run. And this is what worries me.
There is evidence that they are throwing troops into this, because it looked to me like it was all vaporware. That
I don't think it's all vaporware. No, I think it's real. I mean, they have taken villages. It's not nothing, but there have been reports, some of which seem credible, of localized areas where the Ukrainians suffered significant casualties. There have also been reports that didn't seem so negative for the Ukrainians, but were reporting that they were throwing good troops with good equipment into it. This final thing, by the way, from the Institute for the Study of War, I wanted to read. It's just interesting because now they're getting to the business of explicitly exhorting people to report things in a certain way. And this, I think, is new. It says ISW and other analysts studying this war have been appropriately cautious and circumspect in announcing the culmination or defeat of major Russian offensive operations. I'm not sure that's true, but anyway, they say that. Then they say ISW will apply the same caution and circumspection to assessing the progress of the Ukrainian counteroffensive and exhorts others to do the same. I mean, I'm sorry, it just amazes me how openly they are advocates, and yet New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post.
I think after this, they're going to have a harder time getting all those mainstream publications to uncritically cite them.
It may be they're getting less pickup than they were. I don't claim to have been monitoring those outlets as closely for this as I was when I wrote my piece. But anyway, look, I mean, I hope it works.
What?
Because for one thing, the boundary line you'd have if they succeeded in taking Kherson, and by the way, nobody expects that to happen this week or next week. Nobody would expect that kind of success to actually take Kherson that soon. But the boundary you'd wind up with is that river, and then you'd have all the Russian troops on the east side, and that's just a more stable boundary, more like the kind of thing that could be the basis for a peace agreement, which, of course, would be regrettable if it left any Russian troops in Ukraine, but I'm afraid there's no imaginable peace deal it does.
Isn't it possible the Ukrainians are just waiting for more weapons from the West, including, the sort of short range weapons that they want?
I mean, first of all, this is what they're doing to get the weapon. I mean, they think that in the long run, to keep the weapon supply up, they need to demonstrate a success somewhere, like an offensive success. And that at least is the standard reporting on this. And I think that's probably true. I think they're not that badly stocked for the time being. It's the long-term flow of weapons they're concerned about.
Why isn't it like a campaign? Most of the campaigns fundraise on the basis of the threats against them. We're about to lose. We're 20 points behind. You got to send us money.
It's a delicate balance, because even there you have to demonstrate the plausibility of your success, right? You can't be seen as a lost cause and still be attracting the donation.
We plan to demonize our opponents as subhuman. Send us money.
Yeah, exactly. It's working. Great. It's working so far on both sides.
Let's talk about Gorbachev in the Parrot Room, but okay. COVID is sort of an A-list topic. I do think they're rolling out. Isn't it obvious they're rolling out this new line of boosters? They claim not to have the money to publicize it. It's not the new vax hasn't been tested separately. It's going to bomb. I mean, and the reason it's going to bomb, nobody's going to take it, or the take-up rate is going to be very low. The reason is two factors. One, people hear of the side effects. Okay, So they know that on balance, it was a good thing to take when COVID was running rampant. But now it's, they're starting to hear of this and that. And, my doctor, I think we talked about last week, says, I've been in the business for 20 years. I'm seeing stuff I've never seen before. He presumably thinks it's from the vaccine, not from COVID itself. I don't know quite how you distinguish between the two, but I trust him. So people know about the side effects, and they know that COVID isn't that bad now. There are these antiviral drugs. They know 20 people who've had COVID and survived. They're not that scared of COVID, so they're not going to take the risk of the booster. Isn't that obvious?
I know people who are scared of COVID. People who know someone well who has had a serious case of long COVID, and I know a couple of people who know people well, and I've heard about the people, and it's life-changing. I mean, it's like serious chronic fatigue syndrome, and it's gone on for like 9-10 months and hasn't let up. They are the people who know those people, I think sometimes are genuinely scared. That is the real fear. And I mean, what are the side effects that have been specifically and confidently attributed to the vaccine?
Oh, we talked about this. Heart problems in young people.
Yeah, but I just heard of some study in males you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
That's where examined closely. Well, first of all, your chances of getting that from the disease itself, I think, are higher than your chances of getting it from the vaccine. I think that
if you get the disease, but if you take the vaccine, you definitely taken the vaccine.
But if you don't take the vaccine, you're probably going to get the disease. Everyone has had one or the other at this point, just about.
Not me.
Yeah, you've had the vaccine, Mickey. I remember. I know. I know. At our age, we forget things. You have had the vaccine.
If I don't take, you said if I don't take the vaccine, I'm going to get the disease.
I'm saying
I deny that. If I don't take the vaccine,
how many Americans have had neither? At this point, there's almost nobody who hasn't gotten vaccinated who hasn't had COVID.
Right, but you were talking about do I get the booster? If I get the booster, I think there's still a very good chance I won't get the disease. Almost as good a chance as if I do take the booster.
Well, that's conjectural. But my point is that if the question is, was it a mistake for teenage boys to get the vaccine earlier, months ago, because of this heart thing? I'd say no, because the disease itself gives you a higher chance of, I hope I'm not wrong. I didn't bone up on this right before the podcast, but the disease itself gives you a higher chance. And judging by the way things have gone in the last year, you'd probably have gotten the disease if you didn't get the vaccine. Everybody is in one of those two categories.
Some of my neighbors haven't taken the vaccine and they haven't gotten the disease. They're old people. They're old people. They would be
staying in their homes.
They would be dead if they got the disease. It can be done.
I have not heard about specific side effects confidently attributed to the vaccine that are nearly as scary as the long COVID that can be confidently attributed to the disease.
I just the thing that spooks me is COVID's alleged effects on the brain. I mean, you see these horrible cases publicized, but you see a percentage attached to them.
Well, I'll tell you, I think the big unreported on scandal here that covers now 2 administrations is how bad the statistical inquiry has been that, in theory, the government should be doing for us. It's like, if you ask for stats on long COVID, what you hear is, well, they group all forms of long COVID together into a single lump. Everything from someone saying, I'm still sneezing 10 weeks later or something, to I haven't gotten out of bed in 10 months. It's all long COVID for purposes of statistics keeping. Well, that sucks. What we care about is the serious cases. And you just can't find good data on this. And it's kind of scandalous.
I believe you. It does seem to me that the CDC under Fauci cares more about controlling the information than providing a banquet of information for citizens to choose from.
Yeah, well, somebody should grab that little elf and chuck him across the Potomac. As
Bob,
Ron DeSantis put it.
You had your chance to do that.
You mean when you and I encountered him at a party?
When you were younger and fitter man.
Back when I could have done. Of course, he could have resisted back then. He wasn't 81. Um,
the the Potomac wasn't that far away. We could have done it if we'd really tried. Anyway, I don't quite understand the politics of it. They're obviously rushing out this booster, and I assume everything Biden done is for politics. But how does it help him if he rushes out a booster that is then not adopted? Anyway,
well, I don't know if it will or won't be adopted. It seems pretty conjectural to me. There certainly are people, the people who are concerned about COVID. I think a lot of them, and they may be a small number, I don't know, but I think a lot of them would welcome an upgraded booster. This will be an Omicron specific booster, right?
I thought it's the regular old booster with an Omicron caboose.
Well, maybe but wrong. There's something about it that's tailored to Omicron, although not the latest variant of Omicron.
I don't know. Anyway, I guess I don't. I'm going to do an antigen test before I take it. If I still score 400, I'm not taking it.
Are you bragging about your antibodies again, Mickey?
I have a lot of antibodies, Bob. I have bigger antibodies than you do,
and more of them.
There you go. So there's this whole Zuckerberg Hunter controversy, which I think we talked about last week, but there've been a couple of wrinkles in it.
Well, this is what led Trump to do the thing you mentioned earlier, demanding a new election, right? He was responding to Joe Rogan's interview with Zuckerberg,
right,
in which Zuckerberg said something or other.
Zuckerberg, as Kara Swisher pointed out, didn't say anything that was really new. He said he had a little nuances that were new. He said the FBI warned us that that this was something was about to drop, but didn't specifically say it was the Hunter Biden laptop. It was about to be dumped. He said, but but she also said, "Oh, they do this editing all the time. The government's been warning them for years." Well, what does that tell you? That tells you it's old news, but it's big news. There are also people, the point of argument is, did the government specifically warn about the Biden laptop story? And it seems implausible to me that the FBI would have known that the Biden laptop story was about to come out, except that Miranda Devine of the New York Post points out they had access to Rudy Giuliani's cloud, and they've sort of been tapping his emails for 2 years.
Wait, so they were surveilling him in real time?
Correct. And
Whoa.
they
How long have we known that?
I don't know. Maybe,
because as you may know, he was the lawyer for the president. He was the lawyer for the president of the United States.
I mean, it may not be real time. Maybe there's a delay, right?
Yeah.
Before it gets sent to the cloud. But there was an email from somebody saying, "Hey, we got this hot thing. This Hunter Biden laptop is going to blow the lid of everything."
Just wait. They had a warrant or something? How were they surveilling the personal lawyer for the president?
They must have had a warrant or something for some other case. I think it was a foreign. It was the FARA, the lobbyist registration. They were, it's a perfect pretext for the deep state, if you were into that, tracking Giuliani is this, some bogus FARA case they open against him. Maybe it was a real FARA case. Anyway, I'm sure it was a legit warrant. I don't think they did anything that was not, officially stamped, but. I haven't seen any pushback to Miranda Devine saying that they had this. So, and then you remember, well, Zuckerberg is the guy who gave millions and millions of dollars for this allegedly nonpartisan group that helped Biden in the election by organizing in Democratic areas. And you think, well, maybe he isn't being completely honest with Joe Rogan, and maybe they really did know about.
Well,
in
fairness, it wasn't officially a way of facilitating voting in Democratic areas. It probably focused on urban areas or something, which are Democratic. And he may well have known what he's doing.
It involved providing the staff for many departments of elections. It was outrageous. It was the people that were running the election were people from Zuckerberg's outfit.
No, I agree. What I heard about it seemed to me shady. I think. It reminds me in a vague way of like us using Blackwater mercenaries and stuff. See how rapidly the term Blackwater came to mind this time, Mickey? It's like, no, government should fight their own wars, and if they don't have enough support to do that, they shouldn't fight them. And government should conduct their own elections.
Yeah. Anyway, so you have Zuckerberg staffing in. You have Chef Andres cooking you a fabulous sandwich if you vote. I mean, it's the fix was in. I tell you, they should run it again. So anyway, I don't know what to make about Zuckerberg, but I thought the Kara Swisher admission that they've been doing this sort of editing for a long time, more than you think, was a big admission that the people who claim that, and also Zuckerberg boasting of, it's not just us, we formed an alliance with all the other behemoths in the tech space. Well, that makes it worse. That makes it worse.
A lot better.
That means you have a 90% stranglehold on the public discourse for this. So that makes
good. 4 billionaires are running my life. Yeah. Excellent.
And they're conspiring with each other.
Yeah.
Anyway, and his big point was that Twitter behaved worse, which they did. But but his policy is, if something is is contested on an important issue, we throttle it down. So he's admitting he shadow bans. We throttle it down until our fact checkers, who are a bunch of liberal MSM people and a bunch of anti-Trump MSM people on the right, can determine whether it's true or not. So any issue that's important gets throttled automatically for 7 days. That's not democracy. And who decides if it's important or not? Well, maybe the ex-Democrats that are running Facebook. So his process doesn't get him out of the argument.
So is it, just to back up a little, is it clear that Facebook had warning from the federal government about the Biden laptop story before the New York Post broke the story?
No.
That's not clear, but that's what people are claiming.
That's what Miranda Devine is speculating.
Oh, speculating. Okay.
But it's clear that they warned him about something. He admitted this in hearings that were actually conducted before the election, if you can believe that, where he said they warned us generally that there was a disinformation op and we should be on the alert, on high alert. Okay. What the only nuance he added was he specified Russia and not Russia, Iran, and China, and he also specified about to be dumped. But that could just be him misspeaking. So who knows? But they warned him generally about disinformation about to be dumped, that Russia had done it before, and but they didn't. We don't know that they specifically said, and this Hunter Biden stuff is about to drop. But as Ann Coulter pointed out, you don't need a specific warning. All these people are Democrats. They know what to do when an anti-Biden story drops, and they have this mechanism in place to shadow ban it. They don't need to conspire with the Biden administration specifically on this case. They know what to do, and they do it.
Well, I should listen to the Joe Rogan Zuckerberg interview, but the Spotify app is such a pain in the ass for podcasts.
You can listen. You can find the 2 key minutes on the web.
I'd want to listen to the whole thing. I mean, but
that's the kind of guy you are, Bob.
It is the kind of guy. It's the reason our audience continues to grow after these many years. So, Mickey, we've been doing this for.
I'm not that kind of guy.
Well, it's in spite of you that our audience has been growing for these many years. But let me say, first of all, this is Thursday, folks. So if you are happening upon this Friday evening and assuming it was taped on Friday evening and it wasn't a special early Labor Day taping, then forgive us for anything we've said that makes no sense in light of the ensuing 24 hours.
Well, even as we speak, Biden is clearing his throat to say that there's a battle for the soul of the nation, Bob.
Between quasi-fascists, between semi-fascists and...
In his best Meacham-esque prose.
This is bad timing.
That's going to happen, and we won't be able to react to it. So,
but in a way, we handled the general subject
if he surprises everybody and comes out in favor of the semi-fascism, we'll be.
In favor of it, or he takes my advice and goes positive. Remember where you heard it first.
Then we're totally screwed. Okay.
So what are we going to talk about in the Parrot Room? Patreon.com/Parrot Room.
Well, there's Gorbachev. There is a little wrinkle to the Epstein corpse that we didn't talk about last time, which will excite you more than exciting me. There's my attack on the song "End of the Line," which you have challenged, which I
challenge your attack on that song.
There's the movie "The Best Man,"
which a commenter suggested we watch, and we actually watched
and enjoyed it in my case. But there are things to say about it.
Yes, it's about a presidential campaign. It was written by Gore Vidal, the story, and came out in the early '60s.
Right, and it's very Kennedy influenced, but it came out in '64, so it would be after Kennedy was assassinated.
Well, it came out then. It was probably written before.
It was a stage play that came out before. Yes. Anyway, it's a good movie. I thought there are things to say about it. There's an interesting debate, and I'm allowed 4, right? There's an interesting debate about why is culture so boring that exploded in the August dog days between in Michelle Goldberg's column and Jim Garrity's column, and so it was sort of interesting. So I have some things to say about that. That's my 4.
Okay. So maybe fascinatingly, maybe I'll say a little more about why, although I did appropriate the core of your tweet, embrace it and put it to use without giving you virtually any credit. I do want to elaborate on why the tweet annoyed the shit out of me still.
Really?
I want to explain why I was so exercised last time, because I took a lot of heat for this. Did you notice, there are a lot of Bob haters out there, Mickey. I know you don't wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat about this, but if you were Bob, it would hurt you. It would really hurt you.
I have told ALEXA to start my day with an affirming message from Bob.
Well, it's harder for Bob to give those messages when he's being attacked by the haters. So I just want to give my side of the story.
Are you sure you're not digging deeper, Bob?
We'll see.
There's this old motto: "Stop digging." Maybe.
Yeah, there's another motto.
Maybe applicable.
Haters gonna hate. That's another motto. So you may be right.
Okay.
There may be no way out of this.
And don't feed the trolls. You're violating 3 cardinal rules. Okay.
Well, don't you think that's what the Bob lovers love about?
That's what they like. That's exactly what they like. Yeah. So.
Well, in terms of my own, what could I talk about?
The first 2 that I mentioned were things we'd agreed upon between us. So you should get half credit for them.
To talk about, I should get half credit.
That's the kind of guy I am.
There's something I promised you last week, didn't get around to, which is complaining about Peter Baker's review of the new Putin biography. So I'll do that. And I guess for now, what else? Oh, I want to talk a little about Ron DeSantis, because I did do a little work. Why? I know a little more about him. I went and watched the actual video where he says that the high school students behind him should take their masks off. And so I have a little to say about him. Is he scary? Could he be worse than Trump? Better than Trump? I definitely think he should scare the Democrats, because he's a politically more effective version of Trump. And I guess who knows what else will come up. Oh, you sent me a thing about Are Plants Conscious? Something I can just do riff on without much advanced preparation.
There's also the Washington Post going broke. What should they do?
Yeah, there's a story in the Times. That's not nice. That's not nice when the New York Times does that kind of piece about the Post.
They have that kind of rivalry. They used to have that kind of rivalry. And I've been missing it, so that's good to see. And there's the FBI investigating the Monkees, although it's not clear what I have to say about that.
Monkees?
Monkees, yes.
The group, the rock group?
Well, Mickey Dolenz has asked the FBI to release the FBI file on the Monkees.
Wouldn't shock me, man. Because that was J. Edgar Hoover days, right?
They marched to the beat of a different drum. I don't think, I'm not sure That's a good question. I'll look it up.
Yeah,
I'm not
late
sure they overlap.
60s, late 60s.
I think it was early 60s.
When Hoover left, died, whatever he did.
When the Monkees were, I think it was.
Well, that was like mid 60s, but anyway, okay, that's plenty. So in the end, you did do more than 4. It sounds like to me. You violated the 4.
I did because I was making up for the treading water and an incredible deficit on subjects on your part. So I'm trying to beef up our agenda here.
Well, that hurt, but you know, at this point, I've got calluses from all the Bob haters.
That was not big of me. I'm sorry.
No, this is totally uncalled for.
Oh, and there's the Artemis launch also.
Oh yeah, the Artemis scrub.
Well, it's been rescheduled, but John Ellis had the reason why Artemis is going to lose out to SpaceX. Oh,
I would like to hear that. I'd like to bone up on my Artemis talking points.
Yeah.
Okay. So patreon.com/Parrot Room.
I apologize for saying that your topics were.
It's a little late. It's
inadequate.
A little late. The wound has been inflicted. A little late.
Okay. Am I supposed to do anything here? I'm supposed to get the parrot.
Yeah. If you want the parrot to say sorry, Bob, that would work.
Sorry, Bob.
I forgive the parrot.